Welcome back, y'all. As promised, we are back with another video. So much information on that Disney investors call that we had to break it down, and quite frankly, just took a lot longer than I thought it would. So here we are. This time, we're going to tackle the Marvel side of things and what was announced on the Disney call around our favorite superheroes and Marvel Studios, whether it's Disney Plus or the big screen. We're going to go ahead and jump in and talk about it. So we may get into the weeds a little bit as far as how it relates to comics now that Disney has acquired a lot of Fox property, or all of the Fox properties that were out in the world, and how that might go into it. I'll try not to get too deep because if you're watching this video, you may not be completely into the comics, but it'll give you a nice way to see how some of this stuff is going to tie in, because you do know the characters that are going to be coming through. So come on through. Let's go on this journey and talk about what was all announced. Not as many news sources as there were for Star Wars or even Disney animation, but a lot of good stuff was announced as far as shows and movies, and a little bit of progression as we're going to go through. So come on by. All right, guys, so let's talk about Wanda Vision. It looks like it's going to be coming out on January 15th now, as it was pushed from its December release. So that's still some good news. We're going to finally, we're within weeks of being able to see this show, which should be some exciting stuff. If you've only been watching the MCU, Wanda's missing some very key abilities. It doesn't stop her from being a powerhouse in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As she definitely is stronger than probably most of the other characters we've met so far. But she's missing some abilities. In the movie, she has telekinetic powers. So she's able to have force energy blast. She's able to create barriers. She also can manipulate people's minds. But Scarlet Witch is a lot more than that, and we've been missing a lot of her abilities in the MCU for a very long time, probably because Marvel didn't own some of those rights as far as calling her a mutant, or it just kind of fell into place for what they were doing. So as you guys know, Scarlet Witch in the MCU got her abilities from the Tesseract as Hydra was experimenting, and they volunteered to see if they can get some powers. One of the things that Marvel has gone on to do so far is give you some backstory in different mediums on their websites and short stories. One of the things they have is the Marvel Studios Visual Dictionary. And in this dictionary, they basically hint at the Tesseract or this Infinity Stone not necessarily giving Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver their powers, but more so awakening something that might have been dormant. They don't flat out say it, but they also don't say the Infinity Stone is what actually gave her her abilities. And that's a very important distinction now that Disney owns those properties that were over at Fox, and now we can explore what a mutant is. Where have they been? Wanda Vision is going to be going into a new realm. But before we get into that, as we will explore some of that in future videos, maybe even later on this same video, let's talk more about what Wanda Vision is going to be, and just overall, how this is going to tie into the MCU. So as I mentioned, Wanda is part mutant. She's also part mystic, so she's able to control chaos magic. So one of the things that's been missing from the show, and I think it's mostly, or from the MCU, and I think it's mostly because some of our characters, although they're Avengers, haven't really interacted too much, is that magical side of Wanda. So she is an absolute beast in the comic books. She can do a lot more than what we've seen so far. She can alter reality. She can manipulate probabilities, which is crazy. I mean, outside of being able to make the world whatever you want, altering probabilities is an insane power. Anywhere around her, she can make things happen, or make a likelihood of things to happen more so. But it's still an amazing ability and something we've never seen before in the MCU yet from her. So those are two things that are going to come into play in WandaVision, as she's going to create her own little universe where she brings Vision back. Her and Vision in the comic books have kids. We're not going to get into that now because I don't know if the show's going there, and I don't want to really confuse some of you guys. But A lot of things can happen here because it's magical. She's really untrained in general. She doesn't really know what it is right now in the MCU. In the comic books, Doctor Strange tries to help Scarlet Witch a lot. A lot of that comes from him having to clean it up, as a sorcerer supreme. But having that power of being able to alter reality can do something to a person's mind, and I think that happens a lot to Scarlet in the comics, and we're going to see that right now. Is it going to be something that she's altering reality, or is it something in her head? Either way, Doctor Strange is going to be heavily involved in the cleanup of whatever this ends up being. I'm pretty excited because the mutant side of things, what can happen based on this? A lot of things are going to stem from WandaVision, and it's why we're getting it first. We're getting it at the beginning of the year, which will lead to a lot of interconnected parts when it comes to the multiverse, which is going to lead to the introduction of different places, and probably a lot of the Fox properties are going to be coming into play and weaving into the MCU that we've grown to know and love here over the last couple decades. So it's going to be a lot of different cool stuff when it comes to that. I'm looking forward to the show. I think Marvel has an opportunity right now to use some of those Fox properties with this multiverse. And one way to bring viewers along that aren't used to multiple universes like comic book fans are is using a narrator. And I think that narrator could be Deadpool because he's already broken the fourth wall. He talks to us in the movies. And as we're moving from dimension to dimension, he could be probably one of those sources of comedic value, as well as just that knowledge of, whoa, what's going on here? Why am I a completely different Earth? And kind of bring people along for that ride. But we'll see what they end up doing and how they use it. The show's going to be cool. The way that it looks, just that sitcom feel and how it's going to move from era to era. A lot of potential there. We'll see how this all plays out, but it's going to be an interesting start to the next phase of the MCU, and Wanda's powers should be coming along now at a different level, at a different speed. With Doctor Strange being involved, we're going to realize a lot of that is magical, and the extent of her power, which is actually probably more than any of you guys that aren't fans of comic books can even begin to realize. She's a monster in all aspects, right? She does some things that are pretty crazy, that are very villainous, but we'll get to that at some other point if the show comes to that. Otherwise, January 15th, y'all, we're going to get WandaVision finally. Hopefully they don't push it back again, as this is a pushback date from when they initially thought that it would be coming out. But this is going to be something that you guys should enjoy. I'm for sure going to enjoy it. And not necessarily a new announcement from Marvel, but something that you can be excited about in the very short term, as a lot of this other stuff we're going to talk about today should probably be years in the making. So let's go ahead and move on. All right, guys, let's talk about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. As some of you guys may know, the Winter Soldier is my favorite MCU movie. Just loved it top to bottom. Great experience on that movie for me. By far favorite. But we are going to be exploring the Winter Soldier and the Falcon here in this series. As some of you may know, both these characters, Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes, have assumed the mantle of Captain America at one point or another in the comic books. And, the way that Endgame ended with Steve Rogers staying in the past to grow old and gray with Peggy, and appearing in our timeline at the end to give Sam the Captain America shield. I think the show is going to explore some of that dynamic of who's going to be the next Cap. We do know that John Walker has been casted for this show. Some of you guys might not know who John Walker is, but he is the super patriot at the beginning. Was someone that Cap kind of ran into as an antagonist, but over the years, he too assumed the mantle of Captain America at one point. And later became the U.S. agent. So we're going to have three characters that we know for a fact in the source material have been at one point or another Captain America. So this show has some very interesting aspects to it for me. I think there's going to be some play as who it should be. We know that Bucky's probably not going to be the one based on everything we've seen in the MCU. I mean, even in the comic books, it's kind of iffy. With the folks that he murdered as the Winter Soldier. But in the MCU, I mean, murdering the Starks, and everything else that happened and we uncovered during, the Winter Soldier and Civil War. I just don't see them giving him that mantle, although Sam might be pushing for Bucky to take it, just based on him feeling like he doesn't deserve it, and Barnes being more close to Steve Rogers, from what we've seen on the big screen. But end of the day, the show has some potential. I think at some point we will see John Walker don the suit, but that'll give us an interesting take, because Steve is Captain America, right? He's that moral compass, the one that does right. He's what the U.S. kind of stands for and sees themselves as. And John Walker is not that. So that complexity of any of these three taking that mantle of, am I living up to what Rogers left and what Captain America should stand for? I think ultimately no one's going to take it, but the show should be very interesting, and, following these two around the world, seeing different aspects of what they run into, the different missions they'll probably go on, as well as that looming arc of who's the next Cap, what's that's going to look like. So that's going to be the next series that most people are going to be watching after WandaVision. We've known about this one for a while. So again, not something new from Disney, but more a little bit more detail. All right, yeah. Next up, we have Loki. So I don't think it's a secret that Tom Hiddleston's character or portrayal of Loki has been the best villain that Marvel has produced thus far. That's why they keep going back to him. But Loki is going to be centered around the character popping up throughout different through human history, looking at different historical events and influencing things, changing things around. So that's going to be pretty cool. To see him. The fact that it says human history, I think we're going to go way back, way back. Also just, influence some of the key events that we might have. Maybe we'll get a glimpse of Steve Rogers in the past with Peggy. I think it's going to culminate, because it's just kind of like a mini series, and him coming back to our regular or real timeline to interact with Thor, the Thor 4 movie, Thunder and Love, because we need Mjolnir to come back so that Jane Foster can become Thor. So that'll be a cool thing. It's also going to probably intersect with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, as you're going to notice a theme now. That Doctor Strange movie is going to be the center of this phase, I believe, personally. It's going to link to Spider-Man. It's going to link to Wanda Vision. It's going to link to Loki. I'm probably going to have a video with the other movies that were announced soon here, so we can dig a little bit deeper into what that can mean. But Tom's done a great job with this role, and he loves it. We love him as Loki. And the important thing to notice here is at the end of Endgame, well, in Endgame, right, as the Avengers are traveling through space and time to collect the Infinity Stones, they go back to the moment at the end of Avengers 1 where Loki has been captured and the Tesseract is getting transported. Long story short, Tesseract falls on the floor. That version of Loki picks it up and disappears. We don't know where he's off to, but he's gone, because the Loki in our timeline is dead, as you guys know. So that's going to be pretty cool, because this is a different Loki than we've grown to at this point. The Loki we know right now is more kind of like an anti-hero, right? Bantering back and forth with Thor, but he helps out quite a bit, actually, throughout the timeline. So now what we're seeing is still the villain Loki, the one at the end of Avengers who was just trying to take over the world with the Tesseract and Thanos' forces. So what that's going to look like should be pretty interesting, as he pops up throughout different events. And just all throughout history, trying to play politics and influence some of those events to see how he can gain the upper hand and ultimately rule, which is what he's always wanted to do. So that's going to be a pretty cool story. We'll see how long it actually lasts, as I think it's meant to just connect, where Loki's been at the end of that Avengers movie into what we're going to see later on. So should be a cool time, a fun ride, and I can't get enough of this character right now. So pretty excited to see what that future entails. Next up, we have Hawkeye. So this is something many people aren't really talking about. I think the excitement of Wanda Vision being so close and other shows that quite frankly have a higher profile. But Hawkeye's going to be cool. It's flying under the radar. I think this is going to be set up more towards having some type of setup for the Young Avengers. So we're going to see Kate Bishop is going to be the co-star on this show along with obviously Clint Barton. So we're going to see what that looks like, see how she grows and becomes the new Hawkeye as she takes that mantle from Clint. In the comics, she takes the mantle because Clint is dead. I don't think that's the route they're going to go on here. They'll probably keep Jeremy Renner around for a little bit right now, but it just feels like that another coming of age where he's going to help her out. Her dad is not a nice guy, taking on some illegal activity, so it's going to motivate her to be something more than what her family is. So I think it's going to be Clint kind of training and motivating and really honing in her skills so that she can become the next Hawkeye at some point. So a lot of these shows are leading towards a Young Avengers. We'll talk about that at some point in the future. Kate Bishop for sure is one of those pieces that I believe is going to go. Other things we should see in this show, we should see the new Black Widow. Once we see that movie, whenever that ends up coming out, I assume it'll end up on Disney Plus out the gate. But we'll see the new Black Widow. I don't think many people are going to be interested in this initially, but as all of this interconnects and interweaves, people are going to inevitably watch it. Got that word out. But it's going to be something that Jeremy Renner has definitely done a good job as Hawkeye, right? So we give him a chance, check it out, see what Kate Bishop's all about, and really figure out, is he going to die? Or is he just going to be one of those mentors, kind of like we've seen Tony Stark be to Peter Parker as these roles start to transition. So Hawkeye is going to be something that we definitely might not have as our priority list, but as these series come out, I'm sure they'll be staggered. It'll be something we'll check out and really give it a chance, see if it's something that keeps our attention. So not much more really to be said about this one, guys. So let's move on to the... All right, next we have Marvel's What If. So What If is a comic run. It's been around, or they go in and out for a while, of what if something happens, right? So they go through different scenarios around, as an example, it looks like on the trailer, what if Peggy Carter became the super soldier instead of Steve Rogers? What would that have been like? What if Bruce Banner didn't become the Incredible Hulk or do gamma ray experimentations that caused or led him to becoming the Hulk? So many different stories that we can do, especially since it's animated, but I think they're going to stick to the MCU in general. So thinking about the MCU, what if Star-Lord never got kidnapped, in that field when his mom was dying? What happens then? What happens to the Guardians or the Ravengers? If he never was taken? What other Spider-Man? What if Spider-Man never met Tony or had that mentorship? What does that look like? Or what if Peter Parker's grand uncle or Uncle Ben didn't die? What does that look like? What happens to Spider-Man then? So lots of different versions. It being animated lets them pretty much do anything. We'll probably see some zombies. I think in the trailer they showed a zombie Captain America, so that'll be cool. We'll see a lot of different action and a ton of different things. One thing I want to see is if they do go comic book wise, what else we can see. Like there was a Spider-Man run by J.J. Abrams recently that didn't have that much fanfare, but I liked it. I mean, the villain looked cool. I'll probably make a video of that. It was only a 5-issue series, so we can dig deep into that in the future. But what happens if MJ gets killed and the Avengers die and Peter Parker's, the only one left? What does that look like? So a lot of exciting things that can happen with that. The show should be really cool. It should probably run for a while since it's animated, and a lot of the cast that's going to be coming in are people that are in the MCU. So I know it's going to be more centered around what that looks like. But now with the Fox properties in play, as we get through a lot of the multiverse, we'll be able to see a lot of stuff come through and really take different angles of it. maybe multiple Earths, who knows, but super in on this, see what the Winter Soldier's like, had he never became a Russian mind-controlled berserker. All kinds of different abilities, or the way that Marvel can go with this should be cool. So pretty exciting stuff there, and hopefully you guys are excited too to check out what that could end up being. The trailer's cool. I'll probably put the link to the trailer below as well so you can check it out. We'll go from there. All right, next up we got 3 brand new series announcements with no release date in sight. Ultimately, they just wanted to give us a glimpse of things that are coming. So the first one of those shows is going to be Ironheart. Ironheart is going to follow Riri Williams, who is a protege engineer. She literally, very smart woman or teenager at most times when it comes through it. But Marvel's trying to show us a new wave of heroes. We mentioned Kate Bishop earlier for the Hawkeye series. Riri's going to take the mantle of Iron Man. When Iron Man decides to retire, lots of different people come up and try to take his place, but she is the best of those. Her armor is amazing. She is great at engineering. So it's going to be another example for girls, women of color, just showing the show of intelligence, the will to be great, their heart, all that's going to be on full display. Ironheart's comic books are pretty cool. Her suit looks pretty awesome, and it's going to be one of those things where it's important. Representation's important, and there's going to be another aspect outside of Shuri, and Captain Marvel, and even Peggy. The Guardians have a couple powerful women. Scarlet Witch, another example of that diversity of not just women but minorities being displayed in the cinematic universe. So that'll be cool. The next one is Armored Wars. Armored Wars is Don Cheadle's coming back as War Machine. So this is really going to take a look at Tony Stark's biggest fear. What happens if my tech ends up in the wrong hands, and havoc really starts going around? So it's really going to center around Tony's technology being stolen, and obviously War Machine trying to go get it back. Maybe Tony doesn't even know it's stolen. Maybe it's something that Rhodey keeps from everyone as he goes around the world, probably trying to stop them. Or maybe it's more close setting like LA. But ultimately, we want to stop Stark Industries tech from going into the wrong hands, and that's what this show is going to really revolve around. So we'll see. I don't know how much potential this show can have. I like Don Cheadle as Rhodey. So end of the day, it'll probably be kind of like a 1 or 2 season thing. I don't see it lasting too long, but it could do something else. And then the last one is Secret Invasion. So Secret Invasion is a arc in the comic book. Samuel Jackson is slated to come back as Nick Fury. So one of the things we've saw in the MCU during Captain Marvel is the Skrull Empire, or they're not even an empire in the MCU right now, but the Skrull fleeing from the Kree and ending up on Earth. The Skrull is an alien race that shapeshifts. So the ones we met in Captain Marvel were actually, decent. They weren't bad. She helped them. They were really just refugees that ended up on Earth. What the show is going to be about, though, is the slow takeover of a faction within the Skrulls that have invaded Earth for multiple years, probably since the Captain Marvel movie, taken over key positions in the comics. They've taken over or have substituted heroes, politicians, all kinds of levels in the government, and pretty much taken over, all the important decision makers, including some of our favorite heroes. So we'll see what the show ends up being. We should see a bunch of people. I expect we see a surprise of someone we've already met in the MCU that has been a Skrull the entire time. I think that'll be cool. Maybe Maria Hill, since she's close to Nick Fury, or someone within the Captain Marvel side of things. We don't really know, and that's kind of the aspect of it. Anyone can be, right? So are you prepared to kind of question anyone that Nick Fury runs into as the Secret Invasion kind of begins on screen? Really exciting time. They've been doing this for years. So it's going to focus on, this faction and what they've been doing, so far. I don't know if it's going to be in the past or so much so in the present, but Secret Invasion has some good potential to bring in a lot of the MCU characters and really have us question who's who and why. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to be a cool show. Samuel L. Jackson's great as Nick Fury. We've already, seen him as a connection to a lot of these films back and forth as leading Shield and now Sword. I believe that's going to be, what we're really talking about here. But we'll go from there. Those three shows. I don't anticipate seeing any of these three on Disney Plus for a couple of years. It sounds like they're just starting to develop these shows, but maybe we'll get surprised in early 2022. We can at least see Secret Invasion and see what that's about. So yeah, we'll see what that's like. All right, guys, so moving on. Next up, we're going to talk about Moon Knight. So Moon Knight's going to tell the story of Mark Spector. He's an elite soldier and mercenary that definitely, gives some vibes of other superheroes that we may or may not mention here. But long story short, he decides to become a superhero after he is on a mission to protect a archaeological dig site. While he's on this site, the people that hired him to protect the site actually betray him and leave him there for dead. Now, this is what happens in the books, right? We're not sure how they're going to portray this on Disney Plus, but as they leave him there for dead, the Egyptian god of the moon, Khonshu, comes and basically makes a deal. If he agrees to be his avatar on Earth, he'll give him a second chance, but he has to impose Khonshu's will upon the Earth. So he has to really basically be there. So this is about the Egyptian god of the moon. I think in the books they talk a little bit about how it's the god of vengeance or justice. So it is something that should be pretty cool. The rumor is Oscar Isaac is going to be Moon Knight. There's a little bit of disagreement on the role. I love Oscar Isaac. So hopefully it's true and it does some justice to the character. A lot of times on forums and people, they compare him to Batman. There's a big difference. The biggest difference is he does have superpowers. They're connected to the cycle of the moon. So he can have super strength and a lot of other abilities that come with, being a super powered being with strength, speed, and things like that. But it is tied to the cycle of the moon. So as the moon's at its full moon height, then he's obviously a lot stronger. The connections or the comparisons to Batman really come from the gadgets that he uses. So he has crescent shell projectiles that he throws, reminiscent of the batarangs. He uses smoke bombs, a lot of tech, vehicles. So in that sense, I guess it is kind of a good comparison, but he does have powers, superpowers. Batman doesn't really have any. And this is a lot more mystical, supernatural in a sense, as we're dealing with, an Egyptian god, or are we? Mark Spector has some mental health issues in general. So one of the things that's happened in recent years is that he might not even have a connection to a god. So it might just be all in his head, and his superpowers come from something else, which we haven't really discovered yet. But at the end of the day, I think this series has high potential. If Oscar Isaac is indeed, and let me know in the comments, he might have been casted. I checked briefly, but I didn't see any firm details on that. That'll be cool. So I think it's going to pave the way for some more supernatural parts of the MCU to come to, Disney and the Marvel Studios aspect, and that in general, like we should see some more mystical stuff coming up now out of Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange. The Eternals is going to be pretty big when it comes to that godlike aspect, or and hopefully Moon Knight ushers in the supernatural aspect of it. So pretty excited there. It's gonna really give you some idea of how big and expansive comic books truly are. His powers are cool though: strength, hypnosis. He can connect with the spirit world as well. He had some interactions with the Black Panther in those spirit worlds. In the MCU, you've seen that already, as he was there communing with his ancestors and his father, having those discussions when he almost died. So that connection could be important in the future. And there's a lot of other connections with like Daredevil and things like that, as they kind of, patrol the same streets per se. So maybe we'll see some other Spider-Man interaction, Daredevil, as he comes back into the fold as well. So Moon Knight's something I'm pretty excited about. I like that mythology. When you're talking about gods, Egyptians, Romans, Greek gods, all that stuff is super interesting to me. So I'm all in on this series. Hopefully Oscar is the guy, and we can move on from there and see what it's like. But just straight up excitement for whatever Moon Knight ends up. All right, y'all, let's talk about She-Hulk. She-Hulk is the alter ego of Jennifer Walters, who happens to be Bruce Banner's cousin. So we're going to get a show about She-Hulk, which is pretty cool in general. It's going to be played by Tatiana Maslany. I think I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but you get the picture. So this person right here is playing She-Hulk. She's been in a couple other shows, some Netflix series. I'm sure many of you know who she is. End of the day, want to talk a little bit about the story here. So Jennifer Walters is an attorney. She has a day job, pretty cool one. And at the end of the day, her job gets her into some issues and someone attempts to murder her. That's going to lead to her needing an emergency blood transfusion. Because she is Bruce Banner's cousin, Bruce gives her that transfusion, which leads her to becoming the She-Hulk. Now, there's some key differences here between She-Hulk and the Hulk. The first one is she gets to keep her emotions in check as well as her intelligence. So she's a little bit more akin to the Hulk that we've seen in the Avengers now, where it's more Bruce Banner than Hulk. The difference is the Hulk that we have or that we're seeing now is kind of more scientist than brute. Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk is still strong. She keeps her intelligence. She can transform at will pretty much. And in the comic books, a lot of times, maybe you've seen a couple covers where she's already suited up, in a blazer, ready to go to court as She-Hulk versus as herself. So I haven't really gotten into her comics at all, probably ever. But I think it's pretty cool that we'll get to see some more of Ruffalo's Bruce Banner and Hulk. I think he's going to be a main feature here in the show, kind of like her go-to and helpfulness. And we're going to be able to see what the Hulk ends up turning into for the MCU through the lens of this show as we're getting to know Jennifer and everything that she wants to do. So that's going to be pretty cool. Pretty excited to see what that looks like. And we do know some additional information. Abomination is going to be on this show. We know for sure Ruffalo is going to be on it as Bruce Banner. I was going to say Bruce Buffer, among a few other things. So we'll check that out, and hopefully it turns out we do get Bruce Banner a lot of screen time and some help here transitioning whatever he's going to be doing now in the MCU, seen as in he's stuck as a smarter version of the Hulk now. Doing scientific experiments and messing with all the time travel stuff. So pretty excited to see where he stands in the aftermath of all this stuff as Jennifer is starting to deal with and cope with her new abilities. So hopefully you guys tune into that show too, and we can learn some more about Jennifer Walters, also known as the She-Hulk. All right, y'all. Next up, we have Miss Marvel. So in November, Deadspin, I believe, reported that Iman Vellani, sorry if I butchered your name, Iman, was cast as Miss Marvel. So Miss Marvel is a 16-year-old Pakistan-American teenager, lives in Jersey, and a huge superhero fan. If you have checked out the Marvel's Avenger game, she is the main character of that game, and you get a little bit behind the scenes here of who she is and what she does. More than just a superhero fan, Iman is a huge Captain Marvel fan. That's where she decides to get her name from. So I want to say that at the end of the day, this show has potential. So Iman, again, sorry for butchering your name here if I am. She's 18 years old, so the age comparison is pretty close. But the character is going to be more than just like a super fan, right? She's a gamer. This is going to be somebody that people can identify with. That young, gamer girls or comic book fan that are girls can really identify with, and what happens when your dormant abilities come out and you become what you're destined to be, right? The type of different things. And another show that's probably going to tie into Young Avengers pretty nicely. Hopefully we get a Miles show or a movie, but because that's at Sony, I won't hold my breath on a Disney Plus show about Miles Morales. So we'll see what that looks like. But she's going to be appearing in Captain Marvel too. We already have that confirmed. So there's going to be an introduction to who she is, and then she'll start appearing more. And a lot of these shows are going to be all intertwined with the MCU as a whole. But this character has already been confirmed to be coming out in Captain Marvel too. So look out for her as she grows up on screen and starts testing her abilities. She loves Captain Marvel. The powers are definitely not similar. She's more kind of like an Elastic Man, I guess. She can extend her limbs, grow taller. She has some strength to her. But pretty cool character. So as most of Marvel's mainstays are, we are being ushered into a new generation, and I think they're testing the waters smartly on what that could be on Disney Plus before they move it over to the movies and the greater MCU. So we've already seen, She-Hulk is coming. We have Miss Marvel. These are all new characters. We're going to see Kate Bishop. We are going to see Moon Knight. So a whole new slew of characters, and that's not even counting the characters that they got back now from Netflix. So Daredevil, Punisher, the Defenders as a whole. So that could be another aspect of what's going on in Hell's Kitchen and that whole upper East Coast area, Jersey, New York, in general. So that should be interesting. I don't know if I'm going to be a big fan of that show. I'll give them all a chance, to be honest, but just another thing to mention there as another thing. And then last but not least, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special has been announced. They have said that it's going to be filming alongside Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And Guardians lends itself to comedy, so that's going to be something pretty interesting that I'm excited to take a look at what comes from that. And hopefully they do them, quite often at different parts. But Guardians was a breath of fresh air when it came out initially. It was a different tone, and it felt very fresh in the MCU at the time. So this Christmas special I have pretty high hopes for in general. And then at the very end, they announced another series. It's an animated series of short films for Groot. So Groot's going to be getting his own series of short films on Disney Plus, and can't imagine, what else is going to be, but probably going to be some comedy as he is moving through the world, just saying his name over and over again. But we'll see what that looks like. End of the day, that's it for the shows, guys. So very interested. I know this video is coming out a lot late. Life gets in the way and takes me a little bit to make these videos, edit these videos. But I'm super curious, even though we are almost 2 weeks from when it was announced. What are your reactions, guys? What do you guys think of these shows? Which one of these shows is going to be the one you're most excited about, or the one you feel like you might end up watching the most? As always, guys, thanks for stopping by. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you look us up individually on Facebook and Twitch. Lobo Malo NR on Facebook for me, for streaming purposes and other updates, as well as, nerd related on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, obviously, that you're watching on, as well as Facebook. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you hit like on this video and share it as many times as possible, as well as subscribe for future videos. Thanks for stopping by.